Have you ever, stopped to really think about why you are? Well, you. Not just, your personality quirks, but how your actual brain works. Like how it processes stuff, recognizes faces, or decides if you'd rather grab $100 now or wait for $150 next year.
Okay, yeah, basic decision making. Where are you going with this?
Well, what if I told you that a huge chunk of what makes your brain tick in this kind of unique Western way might actually trace back to something as, frankly, boring sounding as medieval church policies on marriage?
Haha. Okay, boring is one word for it. Intriguing is another.
Right. Sounds like some crazy historical fan fiction, doesn't it?
Right.
But apparently not.
No, not at all. That's basically the core idea of our deep dive today into Joseph Henrich's book, The Weirdest People in the World.
Weird. That's an acronym, right?
Spot on.
Oh.
WEIRD stands for Western, Educated, Industrialized, Rich, and Democratic Societies. And Henrich argues that, well, a lot of what people in those societies think of as just normal human psychology. Our individualism, how we think analytically, it's actually kind of peculiar, culturally evolved.
And the church is the culprit, or the architect.
The unlikely architect, yeah. Specifically, the Catholic Church, through what Henrich calls its Marriage and Family Program, or MFP. Over centuries, this program basically rewired the collective Western brain.
Rewired our brains.
It's a wild ride, honestly. And yeah, you might feel a little personally called out by the end of it.
Huh. I'm ready. So today, we're going to unpack this whole mind-bending thing. We'll look at what makes us weird folks so psychologically, weird. Trace this totally unexpected influence of medieval religious rule.
Yeah.
See how it connects to everything modern economies, how we obsess about time.
Definitely the time thing.
And figure out why you, listening right now, might just be a walking, talking cultural experiment cooked up by some long-dead popes.
Inadvertently, of course.
Of course. Welcome, everyone, to this deep dive from Swetlana AI. We're stoked you're here with us.
Great to have you.
And hey, if you're ready to maybe question everything you thought you knew about your own brain, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, share this with your other weirdo friends.
Please do.
Okay, let's dive in. Henrich starts right off the bat, making you feel kind of weird about your own head. Like, hey, think you're normal. Think again.
It's a strong opening, for sure. And one of the first really striking points is about literacy, just the act of reading.
Something we take for granted mostly.
But in weird societies, it's highly valued, right?
Yeah.
And Henrich argues it physically changes your brain, not metaphorically, physically.
Whoa, okay. How so?
Well, it carves out specialized areas like the letterbox region in your left hemisphere. It actually thickens the corpus callosum.
That's the bit connecting the two halves of the brain.
Yeah, the main information highway. It even alters bits of the prefrontal cortex. So learning to read isn't just a software update, it's like a hardware mod.
Holy shit. So my bookworm habits literally reshaped my gray matter. Are there downsides to this mod?
There are trade-offs, yeah. Your verbal memory gets a boost, definitely. But strangely enough, your ability to recognize faces, it actually tends to decrease slightly.
No way. That's bizarre.
It is neural resources getting reallocated, basically. And think about this. If you read English, you see the words blue car. You can't not read them, right? It's automatic, unconscious.
Yeah, totally.
But unless you also read, say, Japanese, you could look at the characters for oikuruma, same meaning, and just admire the shapes. No compulsion to read.
Okay.
It shows how culture literacy, in this case, changes biology, brain structure, brain function, without touching genetics.
Yeah.
And this is huge because, well, a lot of neuroscience.
Yeah.
It's been done almost exclusively on weird university students, highly literate people, so researchers might have been mistaking these culturally specific brain patterns for, universal human things.
Ouch. So basically, decades of research might be skewed because they only studied us weirdos.
That's a significant part of the argument, yeah. It challenges a lot of assumptions.
Damn. Okay, so it's not just brain structure. He talks about our sense of self too, right? The who am I test.
He does. And this really highlights the individualism thing. Ask weird people to complete I am, what do they say?
I'm smart. I'm a podcast host. I am tired. Personal stuff. Attributes, achievement.
Exactly. Personal attributes, maybe abstract groups like scientist, but globally, that's peculiar. Ask someone from a more traditional kin-based society like the Maasai or Samburu.
What'd they say?
Almost exclusively social roles. I am so-and-so's father. I am a member of this clan. I am her daughter. It's about relationships, connections, not internal traits.
So if I define myself by my job and my opinions, I'm basically waving my weird flag. Good to know. What else is in this peculiar psychological package? Give us the rundown.
Okay, so besides that strong individualism, you've got a tendency towards analytical thinking, breaking things down into parts rather than seeing the whole picture first. Weird people generally show more patience, like in those economic experiments, willing to wait longer for a bigger reward. Think Swedes versus, say, Rwandans in those specific studies Henrich cites. Lower delay discounting.
Right, the $100 now versus $150 later thing.
Exactly. Then there's impersonal prosociality. This is a big one. It's the willingness to trust and cooperate with strangers anonymously, even if you'll never meet them again.
Like donating blood or playing fairly in those lab games with people you don't know.
Precisely. Also, a greater focus on guilt, which is internal feeling bad because you violated your own standard, versus shame, which is about how others see you, public judgment.
Feeling guilty for skipping the gym even if nobody knows.
That's a classic weird example, yeah. Then moral judgment focuses heavily on intentions, on mental states, not just outcomes.
It's like thinking about cheating is almost as bad as actually doing it.
For some weird groups, particularly influenced by Protestantism, yes, the intent carries huge moral weight. We're also generally less conformist to group pressure, like in those Ash experiments with the lines. Yeah. More likely to stick to our own answer, even if everyone else disagrees. And we tend towards universalistic morality, the idea that moral rules should apply the same to everyone, everywhere, not just to our own group.
Okay, fair.
And finally, the big one you mentioned, time thrift. The obsession with punctuality, efficiency, schedules. Time is money.
Guilty as charged. Okay, this is where it gets really wild, right?
Yeah.
Because Henrich isn't just describing us, he's saying how we got this way. And it's the church. Seriously.
Seriously, this is the core engine of the argument. This peculiar psychological profile wasn't inevitable. It was forged, shaped over centuries by a very specific cultural force. The medieval Catholic Church's relentless campaign against intensive kinship.
Against families being too close.
Essentially, yeah. Against the traditional ways societies were organized around extended family ties, clans, kindreds. From the 4th century, but really ramping up later, the church rolled out its marriage and family program, the MFP.
Okay, MFP, what did it do?
It was radical. First, it banned marriage to relatives, extending the definition of relative way out up to 6th cousins at one point. That's thousands of people you suddenly couldn't marry within your local network.
6th cousins, wow, okay. That basically forces you to look outside your village, right?
Exactly. It shattered local endogamy. Then, it banned marriage to in-laws bosons, called them spiritual siblings. This killed off practices like marrying your dead brother's wife or your dead wife's sister.
Which were common ways to keep property and alliances within the kin group, I bet.
Absolutely crucial ways. The MFP also outlawed polygyny, only one wife allowed. It started pushing for individual consent in marriage, undermining arranged marriages.
Consent. In the Middle Ages,
yeah.
That sounds progressive.
Well, it served the church's aim of weakening parental and kin control over marriage. They also promoted the nuclear family by, for instance, making children born outside church-sanctioned marriages illegitimate and unable to inherit easily.
Oof, harsh.
And just for good measure, they added spiritual kinship. Couldn't marry your godparents or godchildren either. Another layer of rules breaking down old ties.
Okay, but why did people go along with this? It sounds like a massive disruption to how things had always been done. Did they use, heavy supernatural artillery, as Henrich puts it?
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't gentle persuasion. The church wielded immense power through belief. Breaking these rules wasn't just socially awkward, it was potentially incestuous, sinful. The threat was excommunication, being cast out, maybe even divine punishment, being left unprotected in a demon-haunted world.
Yikes, okay, that's some serious leverage.
Huge leverage. Even powerful people weren't immune. William the Conqueror got excommunicated for marrying a distant cousin, and people were still paying the Pope for dispensations. Permission slips, basically to marry relatives well into the 20th century. That shows how deep this ran.
So the effect on the family structure, on kinship, must have been profound. It basically broke the clan system in Europe.
Profound is the word. It systematically dismantled the dense, interconnected kin networks that were the norm everywhere else. Over generations, this led to smaller, weaker, nuclear families, disconnected from wider kin obligations. It forced people to build social ties and trust outside the family. You can literally track this using things like the Kinship Intensity Index or historical cousin marriage rates. They dropped significantly where the church's influence was strong and early.
So, okay, the church messes with marriage. A big deal, you might think. But holy hell, the knock-on effects. This wasn't just about family trees. This set the stage for modernity.
That's the argument in a nutshell. It's like pulling a crucial thread that unravels the old social fabric and allows a completely new one to be woven. Once people weren't solely reliant on or obligated to their kin.
They needed new ways to organize, to trust, to survive.
Precisely. You see the rise of voluntary associations, things like guilds, charter towns, universities, monasteries, confraternities. People started forming groups based on shared interests or needs, not just blood ties.
And people started moving around more, led to cities growing.
Exactly. Urbanization gets a massive boost. Individuals less tied to ancestral lands or kin networks could move to towns and cities seeking opportunity. Cities started competing for these mobile, potentially productive individuals, offering freedoms and charters.
And this shift away from family-based trust, that created space for markets, like impersonal markets where you trade with strangers.
You got it. The decline of kinship trust created a vacuum, and impersonal markets evolved to fill it. Henrich shows how societies that are more market-integrated tend to exhibit higher levels of impersonal fairness in economic games.
Unlike, say, places where business is all based on your family connections.
Right. Contrast it with historical examples like the Wei merchants in China, where trade networks were built entirely on dense interpersonal trust within clans. In Europe, you start seeing things like the Lex Mercatoria, merchant law, which deliberately tried to create universal rules for trade, separate from personal relationships.
Okay, I'm seeing the connections. But what about war? You hear about plenty of that. Didn't that just make people cling to their families more?
That's what you might expect. And in many parts of the world, war does strengthen kin bonds and nepotism. Henrich uses Tajikistan's civil war as an example. But in Europe, because kinship was already weakened by the MFP,
War had a different effect.
a weird effect, you could say. It actually seemed to strengthen those voluntary groups, cities, states, armies. It reinforced impersonal norms and rules needed to cooperate on a larger scale beyond kin. It could even spur urban growth in some cases. The context of weakened kinship changed how society responded to conflict.
Wow, okay. And then comes the Reformation. You called it a booster shot earlier.
Yeah, Henrich argues the Protestant Reformation, which itself arguably arose from this already changing weird psychology, acted like an accelerant.
How so? More rules.
Different emphasis. Take literacy. The Protestant idea of sola scriptura, read the Bible yourself, was a massive driver of mass literacy.
Which, as we heard, physically changes the brain.
Exactly, reinforcing those analytical, individualistic tendencies. And studies show that Protestant regions tend to score even higher on things like individualism and impersonal trust, even after accounting for the earlier church effects.
And the famous Protestant work ethic. Is that part of it?
Oh yeah, it fostered a different psychology of work and time. Punctuality, discipline, saving, reinvesting. The whole time is money mindset really gets turbocharged. You see it in the Industrious Revolution, people working longer hours, fewer traditional holidays like St. Monday.
St. Monday. Never heard of it.
Exactly, it largely disappeared. This also connects to self-control and patience, wage labor, commerce. It trains you for delayed gratification.
You said this connects to murder rates. How the hell does that work?
It's mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
But Henrich connects this rise in self-control and future orientation to a massive drop in homicide rates across Europe from around 1300 to 1800. A lot of medieval violence was impulsive, hot-headed bar fights, honor disputes, as psychology shifted towards more self-regulation.
People just got better at not killing each other over stupid shit.
Basically, yeah, fewer impulsive acts of violence. Society became statistically much safer, if maybe a bit less spontaneous. Lower interest rates also correlate with this increased patience.
This is insane. So it even reshaped law, government, science. The ripples just keep spreading.
They really do. Think about individual rights. Concepts like natural rights championed by Locke flow from this weird analytical focus on the individual as the fundamental unit, separate from their relationships. That's very different from legal traditions like in historical China, where your punishment might depend heavily on your relationship to the victim.
Right, treating everyone the same under the law wasn't the default everywhere.
Not at all. And democracy. There's a correlation. Countries with less historical cousin marriage tend to have stronger democratic institutions today. Protestantism, with its emphasis on congregations managing their own affairs, likely added fuel to that fire too.
And science. Innovation.
Weird psychology. The analytical thinking, the openness, the impersonal trust, allowing cooperation between strangers, helped create Europe's collective brain. Networks like monasteries, guilds, universities became hubs for sharing and building knowledge.
So, like, the Enlightenment didn't just pop out of nowhere.
Henrich argues it had deep psychological and institutional roots, tracing back centuries. He even shows correlations between specific Protestant groups, like Unitarians in Britain or Calvinists in France, and spikes in innovation and knowledge creation, like subscriptions to the encyclopedia. Today, individualism scores still strongly correlate with national innovation rates. It's all tangled together.
So let me get this straight. The church, trying to control who marries whom back in the day, accidentally kicks off this chain reaction that rewires our brains, breaks down families, builds cities and markets, makes us more patient, less murdery, more individualistic, kind of science-y, and obsessed with clocks.
That's a pretty good summary. It wasn't a grand plan, obviously. More like a long, slow, self-reinforcing feedback loop. Cultural evolution in action. Utterly wild stuff.
Boom.
And the really crucial takeaway here, I think, is that this modern, weird mindset, it's not the end point of human evolution. It's not universal. It's not necessarily better. It's just one path culture took, a specific adaptation.
And realizing that is important. Why?
Because if you design policies or aid programs or even marketing campaigns, assuming everyone thinks like a weird person, they can fail spectacularly or have totally unforeseen consequences in societies with different psychological foundations, different ways of trusting, different family structures. Understanding this diversity is critical.
Right. So final thought to leave people chewing on. If medieval decrees about who you couldn't sleep with literally altered your brain wiring and laid the groundwork for capitalism, what other things we take as obvious truths about how people are maybe just cultural programming?
Yeah.
Deeply ingrained glitches in the matrix. And maybe more importantly, what forces are shaping your brain, your psychology right now in ways you don't even notice? Social media, AI, MEI, something else.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What's the next MFP?
Exactly. Well, this has been an absolutely fascinating deep dive into the weirdest people in the world from Swetlana AI. We really hope you enjoyed having your assumptions challenged.
Hope it sparked some thoughts.
Definitely. Make sure to like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please drop a comment. Tell us what you found most surprising or maybe most personally relevant about your own wonderfully peculiar, weird psychology.
We'd love to hear it.
Until next time, stay curious.